Hello, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us today. Welcome to the Transforming Traceability, How a Global Biotech Industry Leader Optimized Risk-Based Validation case study and webinar brought to you by the IVT Network in partnership with Kneat Solutions. Today, we are joined by Jerry Quirke, Lead Process Engineer with Kneat. Thank you, Jerry, for being with us. And take it away.
Thanks, Stacey. Hi, everyone. My name is Jerry Quirke, and I am a Lead Process Engineer with Kneat Solutions. I've been a process engineer with Kneat since 2013, and in that time have helped many of the world's largest life sciences companies to digitize validation and transition from paper-based validation to more robust e-validation solutions. Prior to working with Kneat, I have worked as a validation engineer in the pharmaceutical industry for over 10 years. I'm looking forward to sharing today's case study with you all. To outline today's agenda, we'll begin first of all with a brief overview of Kneat Solutions, who we are and what we do. Then I'll discuss the benefits and opportunities of digitizing validation. Then we explore today's case study and show how one of our global biotech customers use Kneat to optimize their risk-based validation process, reducing the time to complete user requirement specifications from 60 days down to just 7. We'll finish then with an actual demonstration of the tools used by that customer to achieve this, a walkthrough of other Kneat features, and a Q&A session at the end. Just some general housekeeping then. You can access today's presentation, the full Transforming Traceability case study, and many other great case studies by following the link now available in the group chat of today's Zoom call. So, who is Kneat? Well, we enable life sciences companies to move from cumbersome paper-based validation processes to intelligent, data-centric, digitized validation through our advanced e-validation software, Kneat GX. Developed over 15 years, Kneat GX is the most robust paperless validation solution available today, trusted by 12 of the world's top 20 life sciences companies, used by thousands of users in engineering, quality assurance, and IT globally. Our mission is to help life sciences companies develop and deliver therapies to their patients to the highest safety standard as efficiently as possible through validation best practice. Kneat's client base extends across North America, Europe, and Asia. While our global operational headquarters and development teams are based in Ireland, we also have teams in Switzerland, the US, and Canada. Kneat also has a large network of services partners that extends our service provision globally to Asia and the Pacific, Europe, Middle East, and Africa, and abroad. Services partners are qualified to map and configure your work processes to Kneat, to scale these processes across your various sites, and provide ongoing support to your users. Kneat is continually expanding with over 100 new sites scheduled to complete deployment worldwide by 2022. So first off, why digitize validation? So utilizing a paperless solution as opposed to the traditional paper-based process offers many benefits in terms of operational efficiency. You're looking at the availability of real-time review and expedited protocol generation and also execution. Because everything is online, you're also getting the benefit of eliminating the task of scanning and transportation of paper-based validation documents. And of course, your storage costs are going to reduce substantially as well. Because everything is online in a validated platform, you're guaranteed integrity of data too. Using e-validation software creates a more data-centric approach to validation compared to the traditional document-based approach. All content that is generated in an e-validation tool is data. It is just displayed or presented in a human consumable form. Another benefit of working in an online platform is the ability to manage your projects in one location from design right the way through, with the added benefit of being able to report on the data produced during use. With e-validation, you're not just looking at a collection of words in a document anymore. You're looking at physical data, automatically stored in a database and easily mined. allowing you to get a full visibility over your validation processes at all times. One such paperless validation tool is Kneat. So Kneat is a purpose-built enterprise data management solution for life sciences. It incorporates your traditional document management system with the added benefit of online review, approval, and test execution, as well as the ability to manage data entered into the system. This allows your organization to improve operational efficiency, improve compliance, and also reduce risk. It also improves project management and significantly increases collaboration. Kneat is trusted by over half of the world's top 20 life sciences companies and used by over 3,000 QA and engineering professionals as it eliminates manual document handling, printing, routing, storage, retrieval, and associated time loss and costs. It also increases operational efficiency and reduces the cycle time for any validation process. It also enables online test execution, ensures audit readiness at all times, is accessible securely from anywhere online. It enables 21 CFR Part 11 and URLX 11 compliance, and it automates requirements traceability and risk traceability. And it's the automated traceability matrix that plays a key role in today's case study. So now to our study. So just how did our customer achieve a reduction in the time to complete a user requirement specification from 60 days down to just 7 days? The customer is a rapidly expanding biotechnology company with over 45,000 employees globally and manufacturing facilities in the US, Latin America, Europe, and Asia. And they develop products in 8 different therapeutic areas. After maximizing the productivity of their paper-based commissioning qualification processes based upon the ISP baseline guide for C&Q, the customer's global C&Q organization faced the challenge of where next to increase the efficiency of their process. The most obvious answer the customer saw was the transition from paper to a fully paperless solution, capable of delivering greater efficiencies in both day-to-day C&Q operations as well as large capital expenditure projects, whilst maintaining the highest commitment to risk mitigation. Growing regulatory strictness on patient and product risk originally motivated the customer to implement risk-based C&Q processes based on the ISP baseline guide, with the customer paying particular attention to ensuring quality by design in equipment C&Q processes. But according to the customer's Director of Global Systems and Standards, actioning the baseline guide C&Q approach on paper had been painful and onerous. A combination of paper steps and the ongoing management of an Excel file was required to ensure the risks were identified, incorporated into equipment design, tested and traced in order to stand up to the scrutiny of qualification. This essentially became a very labor-intensive bookkeeping exercise. To that end, what they needed was a system that could flag where risk-based requirements have changed, but most of all importance was centered towards compliance and ensuring that all aspects of the risk-based C&Q approach was accurately traced. They prioritized risk-based features including risk assessment tracing, critical element tracing, testing tracing, and data integrity to maintain their Guide 5 processes, whilst driving productivity features which I will demonstrate for you later on. Senior leaders of the customer's global C&Q organization had been evaluating paperless validation solutions for over 2 years, including a competitor pilot before deploying Kneat. During the initial review, the customer established a scorecard to evaluate its business requirements against a group of 10 paperless validation solutions, not including Kneat. In the assessment, some of the key requirements that were assessed included efficient traceability functionality, This was found to need less clicks to set up and use compared to the leading competitor. Review of documents via traceability matrix. It was found that it was easier to review documents linked to the traceability matrix than the competitor. Efficient testing and critical element tracing. Less documentation was required to link the system risk assessment with testing than the competitor. After completing a pilot with another validation solution, the customer became aware of Kneat GX and conducted a comparative study of the two solutions, in which the customer claimed, when we conducted a side-by-side comparison with Kneat and the other vendor, we found Kneat to be 40% more efficient for C&Q. The customer also cited the robustness of Kneat's traceability functions as a key motivator to select Kneat. One of the winning pieces of functionality for Kneat was the automated requirements traceability matrix, which is essential to a risk-based C&Q approach. That would have been one of the clinching features we wanted that Kneat provided. That was the sort of functionality that was very inefficient in some of the competitors' products. After selecting Kneat, the customer's C&Q leadership and Kneat's project team commenced deployment of Kneat GX at its manufacturing site in Cork, Ireland. From this initial deployment, Kneat and the customer aimed to gather learnings to establish a set of standardized global work processes and templates before rolling those processes out to over 30 sites worldwide. One of the first and critical stages of any deployment is process mapping, where myself and our process engineers map customers' processes into Kneat GX. As Kneat GX does not simply transfer processes from paper to glass, process mapping and the building of document templates in Kneat GX presents many opportunities to optimize customer processes in the digital environment. Some of these opportunities include data sharing, which is optimizing sharing of data through documents and projects, thereby enabling one-time data entry and mitigation of human error. Requirements management, seamlessly linking requirements, specifications, critical elements throughout the entire lifecycle of a system, all the way to testing and auto-generation of trace matrix. Test execution, adapting templates for an efficient online testing experience, leveraging deviation management and approved test case templates within the application for a streamlined process. The process mapping stage of the deployment is usually completed iteratively to perfect the process and templates. This customer, however, created detailed process maps, which were submitted to myself and my team of process engineers. The best practice approach gave us an even more solid foundation to kick off the process mapping and resulted in process mapping beginning earlier and completing faster, cutting weeks off the process mapping stage and speeding up the pilot deployment and the project overall. The duration of deployments for Kneat GX varied depending on the number of sites and processes. This customer's initial deployment took 6 months. Following this initial phase of process mapping, the work processes and document templates were refined over 2 final iterations to ensure they were suitable for use. Prior to deployment, the customer did not have many established global templates in their C&Q process, but by not having those templates in place, we were freer to implement a process which allowed the best approach to digitizing these processes rather than just copying paper onto glass. Following the process mapping stage, once the software's instance was live on Kneat secure servers, the customer could continue iterating the process further if they required, simply by updating the templates within Kneat's document editor and template creator. In Kneat GX, no coding is required to do this, and with the training provided by Kneat, can be done without vendor support. As standard, all Kneat GX instances also include reporting features, including the version deployed to the customer's Cork site. In the months following the initial deployment in Cork, these reporting tools were used extensively by the customer to gather validation performance data and establish a business case for rolling Kneat out to 30 other company and sister sites around the world. As new deployments continue, the customer now publishes further results to a global validation center of excellence group fueling best practice. Following the initial deployment in Quirke, the customer's global systems and standards leadership team conducted a benchmarking study analysing Kneat's C&Q productivity impact against a paper baseline. The results showed significant time savings. After using Kneat, the customer reported an 88% reduction in the approval cycle of a URS from 60 days on paper to just 7 days in Kneat. Other significant time savings were also seen in protocol development and execution, where time savings of 33% and 53% were achieved respectively. Some of the key experiences noted by the customer included training, process mapping, and service provision. Discussing their experience, we can see what the customer had to say. I'm just going to pause here briefly just to allow you to read that for yourself. And what the customer's senior leadership had to say about working with Kneat. Okay, so let's explore how these results were achieved by walking through the functions used by the customer in Kneat GX. So these features include requirements management, importing of data, linking requirements, specifications, and critical elements, document pack kickoff, leveraging existing projects and importing post-approved IQ and OQ sections, review and pre-approval, traceability matrix, which is throughout the whole life cycle of this demonstration, test execution, deviation management, post-approval, and test case tracing also. We are logging into the Kneat application and we get brought straight to our inbox. For demonstration purposes, we will be working in the BioNeat Pennsylvania workspace, and by selecting the workspace, we will get brought straight to it. The workspace can represent a site, and in this case, we have multiple processes being used within this workspace. In this demonstration setup, we have CSV, test method validation, cleaning validation, and manufacturing records. However, we will be focused on equipment qualification and a particular type of equipment such as sterilizers. Within the sterilizers folder, we have individual sterilizer systems, but also a placeholder to contain all our lifecycle documentation for sterilizers in general. As you can see here, we have a user requirement specification, a system classification form, a system risk assessment, a function specification, and design qualification. So we start off with the URS, and you can see that it's just an empty shell, but we have a Word document that contains all the requirements we want to leverage in Kneat. And the intention is to make the requirements data-centric in Kneat so that we can begin the process of utilizing and auto-generating the traceability matrix. So what we can do is we can actually import that content from Word using the import from Word feature. I then go to select the document from my local drive or location in the cloud and open it. And this is the Word document I'm importing, which is sectioned out by word heading that Kneat detects as individual sections and subsections and will generate those sections in Kneat as they appear in the Word document. So I'm going to be importing all these requirements into my URS document in Kneat. I will have subsections for operational and performance requirements, process requirements, interface requirements, safety requirements, and compliance requirements. So you can see here that I've imported all my requirements, but I need to do just a few more steps in order to make these requirements data-centric in Kneat. Using the Kneat editor, we're going to convert these simple word tables into Kneat smart tables, so we can utilize this table for sharing data dynamically throughout the workspace by selecting Convert to SPR. We're also going to convert this first column here into an ID column, as this is the unique identifier for our requirements. And this is what initiates the traceability within these using the Tag ID management feature. I can then apply the same methodology to the remaining sections, covering all aspects of the requirements for my sterilizers. For the purposes of this demonstration, we will skip ahead of the approval process for this URS, so we can quickly progress through the remaining lifecycle documents. I have also approved the system classification form. The system classification form presents criteria for system classification that consists of 8 questions. A yes response to at least one question indicates that the system is a direct impact system. So I'm going to proceed now to the system risk assessment. Within the system risk assessment, we're identifying the critical aspects and critical design elements. According to the ISP baseline guide, the design controls, critical aspects and/or the critical design elements defined during the system risk assessment are considered part of the system requirements and should be included in the URS. After the system risk assessment is completed, the URS should be updated to include these controls. However, if a trace matrix is used as a tool to manage the C&Q execution process, the critical design elements could be added to the traceability matrix only, and updating the URS would not be needed, and this is the approach that can be taken in Kneat, leveraging the automated trace matrix. And we're going to use the critical element as the identifier. So again, we're going to leverage some content we have already created. So not only can I import from Word, but I can also copy and paste any content from a Word document into Kneat as well. So you can see here I've already built up a series of critical elements that I risk assessed. Next, we will use the cross-reference feature in Kneat to link our critical elements back to our user requirements where required. So using the search feature, I can find the URS I just approved and select it. I can then navigate to the desired section in the URS where my requirements reside and select a user requirement or multiple thereof. The selected requirement is highlighted blue, and to add it to our first critical element in the system risk assessment, I simply select Insert Reference. This cross-reference is then added to my system risk assessment, and I can repeat this action for the remaining critical elements. Selecting a cross-reference gives you a preview of the selected requirements. In this case, we have 2 requirements linking to a critical element, so you can have a many-to-one or one-to-many relationship. For the purposes of this demonstration, we will skip ahead of the approval process for the system risk assessment, so we can quickly progress through the remaining lifecycle documents. So this is the functional specification, and we can repeat the same process as before by building our functional specifications using the FSID as our identifier. Next, we will use the cross-reference feature in Kneat to link our function specifications back to our critical elements where required. So using the search feature, I can find the system risk assessment I just approved and select it. I can then navigate to the desired section in the system risk assessment where my critical elements reside and select one. In this example, I have skipped the first critical element and instead chose the second critical element, just to highlight how that looks in our traceability matrix. The process specifications, interface specifications, safety specifications, and compliance specifications are fully completed and linked, thereby building the trace matrix in the background. The functional specification will be approved, and we move on to the final lifecycle document, which is our design qualification. In the design qualification, we are verifying the critical elements from the system risk assessment necessary to implement our requirements and risk controls. You can see there are 2 indicators that are red. This informs me that the values for both attributes are out of sync with approved data. By selecting the information panel, I can see the values in both the system risk assessment and design qualification. By selecting the value assigned in the approved system risk assessment, I can preview that critical element in the system risk assessment. I can also update the value in the design qualification by selecting the update cell value, and I can align both values for my critical element, and the red indicator shall turn green, indicating my critical element is now in sync with approved data. I can repeat the same for the cross-reference value. In order to do the same for the other critical elements from the system risk assessment, I simply add rows to my table, and by selecting all remaining cells, I can update cells in bulk. This will ensure that all critical elements in the design qualification are in sync with the approved system risk assessment. The remaining information for justification specifications can be populated as required. So now I have the DQ approved also, and as a result all the life cycle documentation approved for my sterilizers. As stated before, if a traceability matrix is used as a tool to manage the C&Q execution process, the critical elements could be added to the traceability matrix only, and updating the URS would not be needed, and this is the approach that can be taken in Kneat leveraging the automated trace matrix. So with all the lifecycle documents approved, we can take a look at the requirements traceability matrix and critical element tracing, showing the links auto-generated through the tag ID management feature and cross-referencing. The traceability matrix report is generated based on the owning document number you enter, which in this case is our approved URS. The identifiers are the individual requirements, which we can trace all the way from the URS to the DQ. If you recall, when building our functional specification, we did not link any FSID to the first critical element, and this is the gap that can be seen in our first row. As we have not generated any test document packs yet to link to, the placeholders for all the test documentation types are all currently showing as not applicable. We shall come back to this same trace matrix report to show our test tracing and how we can visualize any gaps in our testing. Our URS, system risk assessment, functional specification and DQ are all highlighted green as they are approved documents. All links in the report are selectable and will bring you to the linked document and identifier. The system risk assessment trace matrix report is similar to the previous requirements trace matrix, but for the critical element tracing we choose the system risk assessment as the owning document. The identifiers are the critical elements, which we can trace all the way from the system risk assessment to the DQ. During the system risk assessment, a risk class was applied to each critical element, which for this example were categorized as high, medium and low. The legend shows the color coding for each level of risk, and you can see each critical element has a risk assigned, which easily helps identify the most high risk design controls. Next, we shall navigate to an individual sterilizer system and kick off a qualification project for that sterilizer. In the equipment qualification log for sterilizer 2, we are going to create an initial qualification pack. These packs are essentially groups of templates that are used to generate groups of documents under one project. We shall choose an IQ and OQ pack in this example. Next, I add a description for my project and add it. A line item is generated in my log with some information already auto-populated based on selections made, location, date and user profile used. Back out in the workspace, I am selecting the project pack I just created. This shall contain an execution plan, IQ and OQ, as well as a qualification final report, and is specific to sterilizer 2. I am going ahead and improving the execution plan so that we can focus on the IQ and OQ in this example. However, I know that I have already executed a qualification pack for sterilizer 1, and I would like to leverage what I have done for that sterilizer. I would like to use the same test cases that were used for the qualification of sterilizer 1. Navigating into the post-approved IQ for sterilizer 1, I can see all the executed test cases for the same type of sterilizer and want to use the same test cases as they are currently configured, maintaining any edits made during the protocol development cycle. To do that, I navigate back to the IQ for sterilizer 2. And you can see that it's just an empty shell, but we have a Kneat document that contains all the test cases we want to leverage in Kneat. So what we can do is we can actually import that content using the import sections feature. Using the document search feature, I can find my post-approved IQ and select it. I can then navigate through the various sections, including the test cases, to ensure this is the document I want to import. I then select import sections, and my IQ is populated with all the sections from the IQ for sterilizer 1. Navigating to a test case, I can see that the test case ID auto updates to the correct IQ number, and the specification references are still maintained for the lifecycle documents for sterilizers. Again, these cross-references are selectable links to allow you to preview those sections. I can repeat the exact same action for the OQ, whereby I can choose the OQ from the same project I leveraged the IQ from. Using the document search feature, I can find my post-approved OQ and select it. I then select import sections, and my OQ is populated with all the sections from the OQ for sterilizer 1. But before we proceed any further, it's time to focus on the review and approval functionality in Kneat, as it is one of the key areas that lends to greater operational efficiency and time savings. Having selected the Review tab, I can now add reviewers to my review workflow, and as the review process in Kneat is an informal process, I can add any users that have access to this workspace. For the purposes of this review, I am adding users from the validation and quality departments. Once I have added the users, I can issue for review. Once issued for review, the OQ increments in minor version to version 0.2. Any items issued for review or approval shall appear in the recipient's inbox and can be selected from there. In addition, each recipient also receives an email with details of the document and a link to the document for review or approval. Navigating to the review version, we can commence our review by selecting text and then selecting the Insert Comment button. I can then add my comments as necessary. As the review is online, other reviewers can see each other's comments in real time, which are easily accessible from the Comments drop-down, and reviewers also have the ability to reply to each other's comments, thereby resulting in time savings compared to the traditional paper process. In this example of a review workflow, I am being asked to ensure we have the appropriate test coverage in place to cover all the requirements, which shall lead us back to the requirements traceability matrix report. Since the trace matrix is a tool, I can run this report at any stage during the qualification process. It's especially useful when I need to ensure I have enough test coverage for all my requirements and/or critical elements. With the qualification project reference for sterilizer 2, we now have test cases appearing under the IQ and OQ, linking back to the specifications, critical elements and requirements. As you can see, the test cases appear orange, meaning the IQ and OQ documents are not yet approved. It also appears that there is full test coverage between the IQ and OQ. However, at the very end we can see there is a gap and our last user requirement for compliance is not covered. So back in my OQ document, I'm going to add another test case from the templates library, which is going to be a 21 CFR Part 11 assessment. I can search the library by number, name and location to identify the test cases, and I can preview a particular test case prior to adding to the OQ. Then I can just add the test case. I can move that test case to any desired location within the OQ, as well as make edits, such as updating the specification reference, as well as the acceptance criteria for the particular test case. With the test case added, I can now issue a second draft for review. This will close the review of the previous review version, but shall remain accessible to reviewers. The reviewers can now accept the draft version, and by completing their review, they are indicating that I can proceed to the pre-approval of the OQ. I can see here that I've already pre-approved my IQ, which is good to go for testing. The intention now is to get the OQ pre-approved, and to do that I must navigate to the Approval tab, and I can select an approval template, which is also set up in the library. Approval workflows are based on user groups that are defined from our workspace. Users can be part of multiple user groups, but can only use their signatory once in an approval workflow. Mandatory signatories cannot be deleted, but non-mandatory signatories can be deleted, in which case I can remove the engineering signatory from this approval workflow. I can assign users to other signatory capacities as long as they are part of the user group. In this example, it is a staged approval workflow, where each stage must wait for the previous stage to complete approval before they receive it. I can now issue for approval. As with the review process, the document shall appear in my inbox for approval. I select the document, and from there I can navigate to the Approval tab. As you can see, I can either approve or reject. I can also withdraw from approval because I'm the issuer of the document as well. So let's go ahead and approve with my electronic signature. Once that's approved, the other signatories shall follow along and approve also. I navigate to the IQ and release for testing. This is because I'm the responsible user. Once released for testing, all test fields shall become active. I can now commence my execution, entering data in a test field, and with a signature field I can apply my electronic signature, and you can repeat this process with every test row and table present. You can see that the signature is date and time stamped as well, ensuring integrity of data. The same is applied for table signatures. I can also take screenshots and attach them. In this example, I took a screenshot of a support page and attached as evidence. I can also edit already executed test fields, where I can go in and change actual results. But I do have to give a reason for change, and again apply my electronic signature. Once I do that, my signature for the row signature is removed as it has now been superseded. I have to reapply my signature again, as well as a reason for change for the entire row. During test execution, we can also switch to history mode, which displays all superseded entries for every test row. And in this example, the original result is crossed out and replaced by the new entry with a notation and reason for change, as well as date and timestamp. There is also inbuilt deviation management within test execution, where I can use the Add Issue button to create a deviation. This deviation form is a document in its own right. It is just associated to the IQ it's generated from. So when I select it, I can preview it and navigate to it. Then I can populate the entire deviation form with the required information. In this case, there is no retest needed, so I can go ahead and delete my retest and scope section because it's not required for this particular deviation. I can then go ahead and pre-approve that deviation form and then complete the action plan for that deviation form and then get it post-approved. With the IQ executed, it can now be post-approved before I progress on to the execution of the OQ. As test cases get executed, you can decide to issue the OQ out for review, indicating to the reviewers that certain test cases are already executed and ready for review and approval. This can speed up the review and approval process greatly, as executors can continue with test execution of other test cases while a review is going on. Other benefits of test execution in Kneat is that you can add attachments to any recorded value cell as needed, and up to 5 at a time. By selecting the attachment icon, the Windows Explorer shall pop up, allowing you to add attachments. All data, attachments, etc. are stored in the Kneat database, and integrity of data is guaranteed. With the IQ and OQ now post-approved, all that remains is the qualification final report. By using the tag ID management, we can summarize the test cases in the IQ and OQ by updating all the red indicators in both tables. This will ensure the test description, acceptance criteria, and specification references are in sync with the approved data from the IQ and OQ. The status is also applied for each test case. The qualification final report can now be signed off to conclude the qualification project. And finally, to conclude with the trace matrix, one last time we can see the full traceability of the qualification of sterilizer 2 to the lifecycle documentation built for the sterilizers. We can also see that full test case coverage is confirmed with all requirements and critical elements traced to a test case.